Alright, YouTube, a lot more people watch the one-off videos than the live streams unless they're quite long or it's a special event, so I decided to give this video its own sort of slot here, specifically on the concept of shilling. What's going on, specifically, this part of this is directed at politically incorrect on 4chan, because many of you need to know what's actually going on in regards to myself, Molyneux, Sargon, the golden one now, strangely enough, in spite of, isn't he below 40,000 subs and he's still a target, which should show you how desperate these people are getting. Essentially, anybody who is, if they're libertarian, ANCAP, neo-monarchist, traditionalist, or conservative in a general sense, even if they're not like outside of the sort of bush-conservative circles, certainly if they're a self-proclaimed fascist, or if they're an alt-right, alt-light sort of new right-wing individual, we're all being shilled on 4chan and elsewhere. I'm sure it's probably quite heavy on Reddit. Keep in mind, though, the tactics are different. You get a group like ShareBlue or CTR or something, they're not going to use the same tactics on different websites. They go to a board like Poll that's more right-leaning in a general sense, at least, is more appreciative of Trump and so forth. They're not going to speak the same as if they're using fucking some left-wing page on Reddit trying to get a raid going. Now, in the past few months, since, the end of the election, we've learned, for example, we should have seen this coming even more. I predicted that the shilling would happen, not necessarily the form that it would take, but it was kind of evident when they started talking specifically about Trump and his daughter. When they started posting that one picture of him giving his daughter a hug and insinuating that there was incest going on there, it was kind of clear the tactics to which they would be willing to stoop, honestly. And they've extended this out because social media now is more important than cable news. You look at the sort of audiences garnered by CNN or Fox, they're probably smaller at this point than the collective audiences of any dozen randomly chosen more significant figures on the alt-light, alt-right, and so forth. Now, what these groups fear most, the CTRs and ShareBlues, the Valerie Jarretts, who's moved in with Obama, of course, what they fear most is a congealing of the right wing, or you could say anti-globalist forces in general. So they try to denigrate any significant personality that comes along who has any significant audience, especially on social media. It's much easier with that. It's more difficult on cable. You get cable. You look at the people there. They're all controlled opposition, primarily. They're given millions and millions of dollars. They're basically told what to say. Like Bill O'Reilly. He doesn't really have original thoughts. He reports basically what he's told to report. And, even people like Ann Coulter, for the most part, would be part of that. Even if they happen to be saying similar things to something like, Molyneux occasionally or something, they're still not in the same class of individuals. So in the last few weeks, the following is what we've learned about people. We've learned that Stefan Molyneux supposedly, again, according to these same shills, is a cult leader who is massively collapsing in popularity because I guess he insulted somebody. Now, I think that's an out-and-out lie, and I don't really fucking care if he was supposedly a cult member decades ago, so kind of stretching there. But then again, you look at what they're saying about others, it's stretching too. Richard Spencer, he's a goofball. He's too much of a blowhard, so you should ignore him. You don't subscribe his YouTube channel. Certainly don't look at his tweets or something like that. Sargon, they say, he's weak, he's cocked, he's this and that and the other thing. About me specifically, they say, Styx Hexenhammer at best is alt-light, he's not fully red-pilled, and also he looks weird, or something like that. With the golden one, who talks about bodybuilding more than he does fucking politics. He's just some roided out goofball, and they post shoops of him too. Now, the similarity between the material that's being posted, specifically on 4chan, and I know more about the shilling that happens there because I use the site more. It's more, as someone who's used it for many years, I can tell more easily which people have actually been there for more than a fucking week. It's kind of obvious in most cases. But there's an astonishing consistency between the claims made and the style of the threads that they post about these people. Right now, it primarily involves badly made shoops of individuals. For me specifically, it's a fake nude. They slapped, I guess, a screenshot They cut my face out, put it on someone who I don't know if they were even nude to begin with or not, honestly. And then depending on the version that you look at, I've either got a blanked out dick, a photoshopped dick, or I've got a swastika sitting in my lap for some reason. And so you can see the sort of intelligence that Cher Blue and CTR and David Brock's people and Valerie Jarrett and these others tend to have. But they've been doing this to other people as well, let's face it. They started off, I think the first active attack that they made was against Paul Joseph Watson, actually. And they've been shilling him too. They've certainly shilled all of these other figures. And that's because they're trying to denigrate our support in any way, because our collective audience has now achieved levels that I don't think before the election thought would be possible. I think they discounted it. They made so many mistakes. I've got to assume that these people didn't have their heads on right, weren't capable of predicting what the internet would become, and that up until maybe a year ago at latest, and probably didn't even realize it until the last few months, they thought that this was, oh, well, Trump will lose. Social media, who's going to listen to somebody who's talking on YouTube? Ha ha ha, we've got the cable news networks at our beck and call. No, people will trust them. Oh, trust in the media is low? Oh, that doesn't fucking matter. I think what set them off, honestly, I think was PewDiePie. I think PewDiePie set them off. I think that he came out and said, well, the media is saying unfair things about me. They're not being very nice. They're calling me like a Nazi and stuff like that. And by the way, I'm going to I'll delete my channel. It started with the delete my channel stuff. That was a deliberate strategy. I said it at the time, I hold to this. That was a strategy by PewDiePie to get more attention and drive his sub base up. The media didn't like that very much. Then all of a sudden you have all these leftist groups attack him and say, whoa, this shouldn't be the face of entertainment. This is wrong. I think it was because he's a white male, honestly, that they had a fucking problem with it. If he was a female or a lesbian or something, I don't think they would have cared so much. I think that Jezebel and Gawker would have been praising him and elevating him to near godlike status, to tell the truth. What happened, though, is that once he got that taste of success, he sort of fucked around with the media more. The media doesn't like getting fucked around with by people with audiences that are several times larger than any of these media networks nationally actually have. The viewer base of a group of even the larger firms like Fox or CNN, I don't think is as large as his viewer base. But then they stood back. I think they realized it was a problem. And they said, oh shit, there are literally hundreds of other people with significant audiences on here. A lot of them don't seem to like us, denigrate us constantly, and a lot of them are really against censorship, and they seem to be all across the spectrum, to the point where someone who's a self-proclaimed Nazi is fundamentally arguing for the same interpretation of the freedom of speech in this country as someone who is a self-proclaimed anarchist. I think they sat there for a second, and they got fucking terrified. Because what they saw is that there's a literal army of people who would attack them. Because I think they realize that PewDiePie's an entertainer. People aren't watching him for political content. He's got over 50 million people there. They're there to be entertained and watch gaming videos and shit like that. But if he were to ever mobilize people and say, oh, I think I'll attack this media site or something, what happens if all of these others who already don't like that site decide to join in the fray and donate a few tens of millions more people that are politically connected and don't even overlap generally with PewDiePie's audience? You're talking about getting attacked, CNN or Fox, getting attacked by tens of millions of people at the same time. They can't deal with that. And so I'm not surprised that right now, for instance, they're trying to move things like Fox and CNN to YouTube as a platform. Oh, for X amount of money a month, I can't remember what it is, you can watch these programs. Honestly, I think YouTube doesn't give a fuck. They'd let cable TV die off altogether, and they'd sit there laughing all the way to the bank, because it just means more people would be watching content on YouTube, because it's hegemonic. It's essentially a monopoly when you really think about it. And just think, that's just one subsidiary of Google, and that's just one subsidiary of Alphabet. Just think how big that company is, all told. So they get nervous. And I think what we're seeing is that the political establishment is pissed. The corporate media is pissed because they're losing money. The political establishment is pissed because they're losing power. And these two have a mutualistic relationship. So when politically motivated shills pour out online, they're doing so as well in defense of the media. And so anyone competing with the corporate media, who is dispensing political analysis, talking about current events, who has any significance whatsoever, they get like maybe the threshold now is 10,000 subscribers. Probably a few years ago, if they were going to target anyone, it'd be 1 million. They wouldn't target you unless you had at least 1 million, maybe 500,000 subscribers. And back then, I don't even think a lot of these larger names like Sargon and Molyneux even had that many subscribers. I think they were still smaller back then, like a year ago or something. Now they've lowered the threshold. It's obviously below 100,000 because I'm getting shilled, Razorfist is getting shilled, Ramsey Paul's getting shilled, the Golden One's getting shilled. He doesn't even have to talk about politics to get shilled. So he must be taking some sort of magical, glorious fucking steroids for them to target him of all people. But it's the same group of people. You can tell by the way they speak. You can tell by the material that they've standardized to post. Now, this is not particularly effective. It's easily recognized as shilling. It's not a particularly effective attack. But I think they're probing right now. They're going to look for new ways to denigrate our support. They can't censor us directly, because that leads to outcry. And they can't really censor us indirectly, because then YouTube is basically screwing itself, and YouTube, I don't think at this point is really willing to do so. I think they're sitting there laughing, honestly. I don't think Google is a particularly pro-censorship company, to tell the truth, especially when compared with a lot of these other social media sites, let's face it. But they can try to denigrate our support. And the way they do that is, oh, Molyneux was a cult leader. Milo is a pedophile. Sargon is a cuck. Styx Hexenhammer looks weird. Stuff like that. That's all they can do. It's their only real line of attack right now. So I'm not surprised that we're all being shilled 24/7 on 4chan and elsewhere. I'm not surprised in the least. It only makes sense that they're going to do that. It only makes sense that they're going to try to squish out competitors that are taking what they see as their market share, their money, their political support. We're supporting groups and movements that they happen not to be sharing their money and their livelihood with. You know, we're supporting groups like maybe some even far left groups would be on this. Like somebody who's like a communist and gains a large enough audience. Yeah, they'll probably shill them too. It's not like they're going to be backing the Democratic Party anytime soon when they keep hiring some fucking neoliberal like Hillary Clinton to run. So we're sort of all in this together. It's the importance of having non-censorship on the internet. But we are being shilled to those on 4chan. That's my statement too. Yeah, these are paid individuals. They're not just trolls. You can tell by looking at their conversations for a fucking 5-minute span that this is not just some group of shitposters. They have a political motivation in mind. Now, who do you think is signing their paychecks? Just some random business owner? Unless it's a pizzeria in DC, I highly doubt it. No, I think it's probably coming from David Brock and people like that. That's what I would speculate at any given time, because it kind of makes sense. These are the people that have something to gain from it. And always look at who gains from something when you try to figure out who the suspects might be, when something fishy is going on. Yeah, they're running scared. They're fucking terrified. Look at how cable ratings have tanked. Look at how the public trust in cable news has tanked over a very, very short period of time. We're talking a couple of years. We're not talking about, oh, over the last 3 decades they lost 1 million viewers. No, we're talking over a couple of years they're losing tens of millions of viewers. They're losing hundreds of millions of dollars in collective revenue. They're losing the trust of the population, and they're increasingly being attacked by rogue political elements, propped up by social media elements. It's almost like the Tale of Two Cities sort of shit. You've got the corporate media in collusion with corporate political entities. And they're the old guard. They've got all the money and stuff. But then you've got all the upstarts on the other side. You got smaller parties, not necessarily new parties always, often, but not always. Rogue political elements within parties that sort of schism off, in association with the new wave of the media, which is literally social media. It's net-based. It's on the internet. It's on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. And they're terrified of that because these sites are specifically what's causing their decline. So they're trying to get in on the sites, but at the same time, they're trying to elbow out their competitors, especially within the political arena. Now, it's kind of hard to do that when you remember how inaccurate they were about every fucking thing that they said during the election. But people do have a short memory span, and at some point, yeah, a lot of them will forget that those things happened. They'll forget that we were right and that the corporate media was wrong. Until then, though, they've got to keep shilling because they got to keep making their bucks, essentially. It all boils down, in the end, to money. That's about all. Peace out.